Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a literary podcast where we deep dive into the writings of your favorite novels. This summer, we are hosting our Romantasy Edition of a book club while we prepare our 15-part literary analysis of Sarah J. Maas's A House of Sky and Breath.
This is Jack.
And I'm Amy.
And each week we'll discuss one book from our summer book club roster. By using our literary backgrounds, we'll provide our first blush analysis of each book, as well as discuss listener thoughts.
This week, we're discussing Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross.
Last book.
And then Sky and Breath.
Ooh, homework. I was explaining it to my new therapist. I was like, you don't understand. Summer vacation's done.
I know, we have to start doing homework again.
It's starting to go in. Although
it's not even July.
I know. I'm not gonna lie. There's like a glaring thing that's obvious in the literary analysis, like immediately that we've never discussed before.
Uh-huh.
I am racing to write my notes before you.
Well, I'm very excited for you to write notes before me because my life is easier when you write notes before me.
Nice. Yeah, I'll be sprinting just so that I'm like, no, I caught this.
I own it.
Yeah, it's mine. Anyway, so that's next week. Right now we're talking about Divine Rivals.
Yes. So
you had a lot of emotions.
I had so many emotions. I had to warn Jack before she read it because I was like, I am in such a bad mood. The entire time I was finishing up like the last 2 hours, I was like, I hurt so much. I can't talk about this. I refuse to talk about it on the podcast because I'm in so much pain. How could anyone want to read this and talk about it later?
Yeah, I'm happy you did. And I had like this elaborate thing, which honestly I think is what made me feel better. One, I knew sadness was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Two, I had a backup plan. So immediately after, I watched Where the Heart Is and Me Before You. So I was sobbing last night. My eyes and lips, my lips get really puffy when I cry.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so my eyes and lips were like super puffy, and I was like, yes, I'm ready.
Yeah, I don't know how you did it because I was miserable just finishing the book. Oh.
Again, it was just like a nice cathartic cry. It was great. I had a great time last night feeling miserable. I'm really good at sad. That's where I thrive. So let's clarify. We both listened to it.
Yes.
We did not read it.
Correct. And we have not read the sequel.
Yes, so don't worry about spoilers because we know nothing.
Yes, we're only spoiling the first book.
Is it spoilering, or should people have known by now?
I mean, people should know by now.
I know this is the last book of the whole thing.
That's right. We're discussing the entirety of the book.
That's what I'm excited for. HOSAB is like, we're just going to start with like, we give up.
Yeah. Spoiler warning, and this is your only warning.
Yeah, at the beginning of the HOSAB, it's going to be like, spoiler for everything.
No.
Leave us alone.
Yeah, I think the only thing we could really say is, like, we won't reveal the entire plot of Throne of Glass.
Only because I can't remember it.
That's fair. That is an advantage.
Yeah, like, the only reason why we don't talk about Throne of Glass as much as we do is because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, the folks here might be here only for Divine Rivals.
Oh, so right. So
why don't we jump in?
All right, First Blush.
The entire time I was listening to the book, I was like, this is You've Got Mail in the 20s meets Hades and Persephone in the background and magic typewriters. Like, I was just like,
in Narnia.
Oh, and Narnia. So it felt like an amalgamation of a lot of things. Like, tell me it's not like You've Got Mail.
Okay, no, the thing is, what it's more like is not You've Got Mail, it's what You Got Mail is based after, which is Shop Around the Corner. Shop Around the Corner is a film from 1940 something. It's actually set during World War II. and it's I think it's even like in Germany or something like that, and it's
Uh-huh.
about two people who work in a sales shop, and the two of them are competing salespeople, and
Mm.
they are going back, and then they leave letters in like a PO box type thing in like a folder, and that's how they get to know each other through there. So it is You've Got Mail, but it's more like Shop Around the Corner, which is what You've
Yeah.
Got Mail is about.
Which I think that's great to know, especially given that it was based in the 40s, because let me revise my time period statement. This is like World War One.
Yeah.
This is the th- yeah. Oh no, I guess my 20s assessment was
No,
about
you
right.
got it, babe. You're
So
good. You're
yeah,
good. Yeah.
early 1910s. Um so yeah, I love to know that because I didn't know that about You've Got Mail.
Yeah. It's like considered a Christmas movie, I think. I mean, at least it's a movie I watched during Christmas, so who knows.
Sh-
But
Shop Around the Corner?
yeah.
Oh, okay. You've seen it before?
Yeah, I've seen it a couple times.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'm cultured.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
I
great.
know things. No, when I was like and that's why the the bookstore is called Shop Around the Corner in You've Got Mail,
Mm,
and that's like the nod to it. And it is a so the reason why I was like so excited when I was list reading this was because it has that like old-timey feel,
mhm,
and it is so similar to Shop Around the Corner, where it's like they work together and they're competitors within there,
mhm, mhm,
and it was such a direct inspiration. And then, like you said, there's Persephone and Hades happening in the background, which is like,
mhm.
and both of these are such choices because it's not like she's hiding it, like
Right, 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 right.
they're, but I don't want to say she's ripping it off, obviously. Like, I don't think that's the case, but it's like, oh, this is going to be a direct pull from those two things.
Right. Well, I mean, it's like other discussions we've had where she's paying homage or
Yeah.
homage, depending on how you pronounce it.
Homage, we're fancy here.
It's paying homage to it's a call and response. It's
Uh-huh.
the I really liked this, but I wish it had this. Like I
Yep.
really liked Shop Around the Corner, but what if it had fantasy elements?
Yeah.
What if it had a war in the background?
And I love Hades and Persephone, but like what if Hades was actually bad? What if we stop
Mm,
romanticizing him? What if like
mm.
the gods were
We're
this back
warring.
yeah, are actually in war?
Yeah, yeah, and it's affecting human lives.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I
It's
mean,
really good.
it's a very compelling idea.
Yeah. And I think that that compelling idea kinda like threw some people off, just kinda going through the likes and dislikes. And I mean, I wanna specify, I loved this book. Like,
Mhm.
I was so into it. I was very once I knew it was gonna be a sad ending, I was like, "Yes, make it hurt. Crawl for her." Right? Like, it's like one of those, like, you can tell she's having fun being evil and writing it and stuff.
Mhm, mhm.
And this book is going to be one of my favorite books that I've read this year. Like,
Oh,
one of my top
okay.
books, I think, like, that I've read. And yeah, out of 2024, it's top 5 that I've read this year.
That's a high bar because you
It
read a
is.
lot.
I have a lot of books that I've read. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I thought like so we were talking a little bit before I thought sidetrained, uh, that the world with the idea of the gods happening in the background, I know some people were thrown by it, and I know that, but for me, I really enjoyed it because it's such a like what if you're just in the crosshairs of it? Like, what if you
Mhm.
weren't a main character? What if you weren't like and suddenly you discover she's the daughter of one of the gods?
Right, right. Or also, what if she was called by a god, right?
Yeah.
Her brother is that character, not
Yeah.
her.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, yeah, I also like it because I like that it stays with the humanity. Unlike
Mhm.
something like Touch of Darkness, where we're dealing with gods,
Yeah.
it's about being human and trying to
Yeah.
survive in a world that you have no control over.
Yeah. And you're true, and it really shows that, like, people just get caught in the crossfires, right?
Mhm,
Like, whether you wanna call it gods or, leaders in politics of today,
mhm.
people are there are human lives that could easily do without this war. It's
Yeah.
fine. It has nothing to do with them. It is truly a war between gods, and everyone else has nothing to do with this.
Mhm.
They don't need to be a part of it, and yet they're being dragged into it because of egos,
Mhm.
essentially.
Mhm. Yeah. Or a sense of false ownership.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say I think I it was a rough start for me. I felt like I couldn't, and granted, I was listening to it on my commute. So a lot of the info dumping at the start in the world building
Yeah.
before the and it's strictly just the start
Yeah.
that I was just like tuning it out.
Okay.
However, once I got into it was like the period right before Iris's mother dies.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that period where you can tell Roman is really falling for her, like,
Yep.
when they go to the sandwich shop and they start to interact more,
Yep.
that's when I got on board.
Okay.
I think the period after the prologue, where it was introducing the world and their dynamic, was a little harder for me. And maybe it was
Yeah.
just my commute that day, like, I don't know.
I think because I at that point she didn't have at that point she didn't know get the letters yet. How soon did she get the letters from him? It was pretty fast in the book, right? That she started receiving letters from him
Yeah,
also.
so maybe it might be that I just tuned out the part before she started getting letters
Yeah, I'm
from
just trying to
him.
think of like I can't remember anything even though I just listened to this. But I feel like I was on board pretty quickly, mostly because I think that Iris is I liked her character quite a bit.
Mhm.
I felt like she was kind of refreshing in the sense that she wasn't like overly gruff and she wasn't overly, I'm a pot optimistic. She was just kind
Yeah.
of like I am surviving, but she also like wasn't necessarily complaining about it. She was just trying to get
Mhm.
through her day. And I felt like it felt like a much more realistic approach to life in my mind. Maybe that's not the case for everyone, but she was late to work, but she didn't really want to talk about it. She was angry at her brother, but she didn't really want to talk about it. She's angry at her
Mhm.
mom, but she didn't really want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And there was a lot to her that I was, you don't get the stabby female. You don't get this like super sassy woman, right? I mean, if you poke her too much, she'll respond. But like it just felt like she was just a normal person.
Yeah, I mean, for me, she does have a lot of qualities that I think, in my mind, a lot align with Feyre from A Court of Thorns and Roses,
Yeah.
like, in the real
Yes.
very beginning, just that surviving
Yep.
aspect. Granted, she was a little stabby because she killed a wolf
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
beginning.
girls got to do
But
what a girl's got to do.
other than that, like, I feel like they were the same person in a lot of ways, of just like,
Yes.
I'm trying to make the best of the situation that I'm in. It's not a great situation, but I'm not gonna be a bitch about it.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna try and do my day to day.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you had been like, "Hey, what does Pharaoh look like not starving and has some
Mhm.
shelter?" It would be Iris, because
Yeah. Yeah.
she also and I think I appreciate, Rebecca Ross, that's the author.
Mhm.
I think I appreciate it where it's like I can see the inspiration from Farah there, but she didn't go over the top with it.
Yeah.
And she didn't go, like, full Farrah. Like, what is a person's true reaction? What would they be like in this
Mhm.
situation? And it didn't feel over the top. Even in the moments that were frustrating, like her not telling her boss
Yeah.
what, about, like, her mom and stuff, it's annoying, it's frustrating, but I also get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you both empathize with her, and also your actions make sense even if that's not what I want you to do.
Yeah, and, like, I know a lot of people don't like Iris just because of, like, what the choices that she makes at the very end, like, a
Mhm.
lot of people don't like her, but I like, n all of it was stuff that I think is, like, super relatable.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about that at the end, that, you know, am I annoyed that every time Roman asks Iris to choose him, stay with him,
Mhm,
she always finds a reason not to?
mhm.
And right when they're on the front lines, she's like, I've got to go help these other soldiers.
Yeah.
When he's in the infirmary, well, I'm mad about his identity reveal. When she's when there's tear gas, well, there's tear gas, and I thought this man was him. There's so, or oh no, right before the tear gas,
When the
he
thing was about to drop.
right. She was gonna go get a plank to
Yeah.
help the person that Roman's with, right? And Roman looks at her and is betrayed every time.
Yeah.
He feels betrayed every time. But what I feel very strongly about with Iris is that is so in character for her because she's so accustomed to being left behind.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to get left behind by Roman. She chooses to always leave him behind instead. And
Yeah.
that's so frustrating, but it's so in line with what she's shown us about her character.
Yeah. I also think that, like, she's just so independent. Like, she's
Yeah.
been taking care of things for so long. And the things that you're listing where, like, if Roman can't walk, right after the bomb drops and stuff, and they're, she's trying to go get a plank of wood, he can't walk. And the plank of wood isn't that far. So, like, it's kind of like, at that point, she's committed to staying with him. In her
Yeah.
mind, she's been like, I'm going to stick with him, and going to go get a plank of wood like, trust me, as I was reading it, I was like, no, bitch, no, you stay.
Wrong choice.
You stay, you just, like, watch the person die, it's fine. But at the same time, like, she is having a traumatic response to what happened
Hmm.
earlier when her and Roman were on the front lines, and she went back and forth trying to save people there too. And that wasn't even something that she decided. She was told to do that. She
Right.
was ready to get on the lorry and was, like, ready to go bounce with Roman, but then that one guy was like, you go help and pick up people, and now suddenly she's in charge of who lives and who dies,
Hmm.
depending on who they get back. And we can see, which I applaud Ross with, the PTSD
Hmm.
that Iris has, every
Yeah.
time there's like, something drops or something like that. And, she kind of has flashbacks to that. Well, of course, in this moment, she would want to go and help people because that's what happened last time.
Right. She has now been conditioned.
Yeah.
Like, other people's lives depend on her going to help them.
And ultimately, like, she was willing to run away from people when she was running with Forrest and thought it was Roman.
Yeah.
And, I was talking to Cambria about this, and our friend, and she was just like, she should have known that that wasn't him. And I'm like, wartime, like, have some grace. He's
Yeah.
wearing a mask. He has the the romper on and everything. And
And her mouth and eyes have probably just been bleeding, like.
yeah, and she's just, like, happy to get the hell out. Like,
Mhm.
okay, he's being rough with her. I would too. Like, I would be busy trying to, like, get someone out. So, like, I don't fault her for that. Uh, I'm even proud of her of coming around to Roman after a few days after the hospital moment when she
Mhm,
discovers
mhm.
his identity. I was worried that was gonna get dragged out. Like,
Yeah, me
I
too.
thought that it was I thought her resolution to that was, like, fairly reasonable, and I was like, I don't know, like, apparently I really like Iris. I didn't know I felt this
I
way for her.
I really like her, actually. I
Yeah.
think she is a great flawed character.
Yes. Yeah.
She is extremely believable, and she never is more powerful than she was at the start,
Mhm.
which I also appreciate. I
Yeah.
appreciate that she is as flawed at the end as she was at the beginning.
Yep. Yep.
The only thing that has changed really are her feelings for Roman.
But with that, she's also changed because she's open to friends, to,
Yeah,
Addie, to
Marisol.
Marisol, thank you. I was like, it's not Merida. Marisol and Addie, like, and she's open to Roman, like, she says at one point, "This is my family.
Mhm.
This is, like, the life." So, you go to Iris at the start of the book, who was so closed off to her own family,
Yeah.
to, Forrest being gone, and to her own mom and everything, that now you have her making a very conscious choice of being emotionally open to others.
Mhm.
And I think what hurts so much about it is that she quite literally ends the book where she starts, and that's
Mhm.
in her room.
Mhm.
And that's really painful because, yes, she has the same flaws, like, though she absolutely, she's really consistent, but she has grown as a character,
Yeah.
and she has, like, really figured out, and she's made such conscious, like, good for you, Addie, like, or Iris, like, she makes such conscious decisions of, like, I'm going to give him a piece of armor. I'm going to try. I'm scared and I'm going to try, just to end up home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was really painful. I think I'm not ready to talk about the very, very end with her in the room and the last letter she reads.
We'll get to that later. We'll work our way up to that.
Yeah, but we definitely need to talk about that.
Yeah, no. How about this? We'll read some comments.
Okay.
So, one of the things that we've consistently seen on feedback from our listeners that they like is the writing style.
Mhm.
And I agree. I thought this was such a well done, well thought out, well written book.
Yeah, I think what everyone seems to love about it, I'm seeing multiple times how whimsical it is. One
Hmm.
of our listeners said, "The romantic writing style had me giddy with whimsy."
Yeah.
It's so cute.
Yeah.
But I do think that's true, and I like that I feel like that writing style reflected Iris's writing style, or what we
Mm.
understood of Iris's writing style to be,
Mhm. Mhm.
that it's very emotional, it touches something that straight facts can't touch.
Yeah.
And I feel like in some ways Rebecca Ross was giving her writing style over to Iris to own, which I really
Yeah.
enjoyed.
No, I mean, that's a really good point I hadn't thought of. Like, you can't write a book about two writers and not make it good writing.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like, there has to
Absolutely.
be some emotions to it. Like, there's one, I can't remember which letter, but there's one letter that Iris opens and she says it felt like butterfly wings opening in the palms of her hand.
Mhm,
And I
mhm.
was like, that is beautiful. That's just
That is
like
beautiful.
it, and like she captures the world so perfectly because the world is very whimsical. It is so different from a lot of things that I've read, and you can't have this type of fantasy, this type of mythical world that we've never really experienced before and not have it have its own feeling. Like, sometimes when
Mhm.
I listen to music or I read something or something like that, I get, like, I can imagine colors with it, and I felt like, so when I say this is a very colorful book, to me, like, I could see the colors as I was reading, if that makes sense.
Mhm, mhm. I will say that this book felt very cinematic because of
Yeah.
the way the writing is,
Yeah.
because you could see how the letter opening, like the wings of a butterfly, would visually look,
Yep.
right? You get those descriptions not only are whimsical, they also translate visually.
Mhm.
And I like I said, after a little bit of info dumping at the start, I was on board. And part of it was because of this writing style, that it's very
Yeah.
captivating.
Yeah. And wait, I had a thought. I think I think it has to be, wait, where was my thought going? Okay, I'm gonna say the thing and let's see if I can get there. I
Okay.
might have to cut it out. But I was kind of like, my brain thought process was starting to go with, like, you need it to be whimsical with the gods,
Yeah.
because you have this, like, oh, that's what I'm going for. You have this, like, really intense thing happening, right? You have gods and you have war. You
Mhm.
have destruction. You have this really intense thing going on. You need to counteract it, or you don't need
Mhm.
to, but it's a choice, a creative choice that she made to counteract that harsh reality with a very thematic, beautiful writing style.
Well, let's take it one step further. You have these really heavy subjects of gods fighting, of war, of destruction of humanity in pockets of the world. And the choice to use a very romantic narrative
Yeah.
style makes the everyday life feel more meaningful,
Yep.
more important. It
Yeah.
it gives it purpose in a way that I feel like if you wrote about these lives in a more matter of fact way, we wouldn't really care.
No, and that's such a good point, like, romanticizing the world in a world that's, like, not dealing with the war,
Mhm.
because, like, we don't get much war scene, like, the wartime between everything, right? We get the final battle, and we get them in the trenches. That's
Right.
it. The rest of it is about life away from war and how it's being
Mhm.
impacted by it,
Yeah.
and there's, like, a special bubble that's
Yeah.
happening because they're surrounded by this thing, this war that they can't stop, but it's
Yeah.
encompassing them. So their bubble, their world is has to be its own little romanticized way of looking at things.
Yeah. I and to me that like really in a war story we're reading about people gardening and forgetting to water the garden,
Yeah.
but it's such a beautiful feeling to be like
Mhm.
this place is sacred to the people who live there.
Yeah.
It, for so many reasons. It's the bond between Keegan and Marisol. It's where Roman and Iris get married. Like,
Mhm.
it's a very special place, and I will always visualize a slightly dying garden
Yeah.
as this book. Like,
Yeah.
warm sun, some vegetation, kind of sparse,
Mhm.
and people in jumpsuits. Like,
Yeah.
that is the visual I get from this book, and it's really beautiful because there's so much meaning to that.
Yeah, and I feel like she does a good job with making each setting, the setting of the city and the setting of the town,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That they feel safe and they
Mhm.
feel separate and away from the war. Even with the little village that they're in and the warnings and the bells, it's all doable, like you just kind of like hunker down. You just wait
Yeah.
for these horrible, scary things to pass. But like, nothing's happened to them yet. And all these like you get to have the peace to make a garden. You get to
Mhm.
have the peace to go check out the people at the hospital and write their books, their letters for everyone. So there's a lot of things that they can do to survive and make an everyday life, which is such a human experience where they're able to continue with everyday life in the midst of all this chaos.
Yeah. Yeah. Which should be celebrated.
Absolutely. Still in realms of writing, I want to talk about the pacing of the book.
Mhm.
'Cause you have so many different sections, like, it's funny thinking about, "Oh, they were in the city before,
Mhm.
and then they went off to war, and it's like to be war correspondents." And I felt like the pacing, for the most part, was really well done.
Mhm. Yeah, I it jumps, right? But it jumps in the way that exchanging letters through mail jumps.
Yeah,
It jumps in the way that is natural when you're corresponding with someone.
yeah.
And so I think it was very rare for me to feel like, wow, how long has it been?
I think that for me, it was, like, more towards, like, the end with falling in love with, what's his name? The Carter? What's his, like
Oh, Kava.
Falling in love with Kava versus falling in love with Roman. Like, I needed a little bit more time to, like, actually fall for them each, but at the same time, like, I'm on board.
Um, One of our listeners told us one of the things they didn't like about the book was that the stakes were not high enough for the war between Dacre and Enva.
I saw a couple of comments similar that, like, there wasn't much plot, that the plot wasn't as intense as they would have liked, and I can see why someone would have those thoughts, but I feel like the intention isn't to have this grand fantasy. I think the intention was to have what do everyday lives look like in this larger thing that's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think it goes to everything we were talking about earlier in the episode. We don't really care about the gods.
Yeah.
Like, I was shocked we even got any perspective from a god
I know, right?
at the end of the book. And it was only really to explain what happened to Roman
Yep.
and to set up for the next book. So I didn't need, personally, did not need stakes for the war. And when you think about it, like, let's look at World War One.
Mhm.
Why was that war started?
We killed off Franz Ferdinand.
Franz Ferdinand, and it was because a bunch of people were a bunch of allies with a bunch of other people. They all decided they had to go to war.
Mhm.
It's a very stupid reason to go to war.
Yeah. Most
It's
wars are quite stupid.
Most wars are quite stupid. So, you know, regardless of whether there are people who feel like the stakes are high from an
Mhm.
outside perspective and from a marketing perspective, if we're
Yeah.
gonna be honest, like, how do you sell this war to people and convince them to join your armies? Like, you
Yeah.
can't. Instead, they have to be compelled by a god to join the army.
Right? Right?
So I didn't need the stakes to be high because I knew they weren't high. It's about, as you said earlier, Jack, it's about the ego of one person or
Of
one god.
one god, yeah. And I mean, and that's just the background. Like that's not what the book is about. The book is
Mhm.
about two people falling in love in a magical way, you know? And
Right.
what is the plot? At one point halfway through, I was like, "Oh, there's not like a plot necessarily." Like,
Mhm.
girl tries to find her brother, becomes a war correspondent, and boy follows after her and they fall in love. And they kind of have like a shop around the corner situation with magic typewriters. Like,
And then they get separated by said brother.
yeah, like uh, and so like when you and that's like again, that's not the plot, that's the end, that's the twist.
Yeah, yeah,
So, like I can see book 2 having an actual plot, like trying to get
yeah.
him back, trying to get other things, but it just feels like I have such a quaint feeling about this book, like
Mhm,
kind of like you described it, a dying garden and a beautiful sun and rolling hills
mhm,
and stuff. And
mhm,
it's just a pretty little love story. Like it's just a cute little thing that is in the middle of chaos and horrible things happening. So, like I was aware at one point where I was like, it's not really much of a plot. Even the through line, the thing that gets
mhm.
someone the like overarching plot, right? The thing that's like supposed to get you from A to Z, and that's supposed to be her looking for her brother. It was still like it's kind of half-hearted, like it wasn't.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the point of this book is about these two characters falling in love
Mhm.
and Iris opening herself up to relationships.
Yeah. And that's
And
and that's okay.
yeah, it's okay. I think, the wars in the background, the stakes aren't high because I can almost guarantee that was not the story that Ross wanted to write. She
Yeah.
she wanted a reason to write about two war correspondents falling in love.
When I read the back of this book when we were trying to figure out like which book to like throw in for the last two,
Mhm.
it sounded stupid. Like I was like two journalists fall in love with a magic something or other, and I'm like, oh, this sounds lame. But like, you know, I got really into it. I was very
Mhm.
much like it's not slow pace, but it's not a speedy thing, and it's just not, when we think about fantasy books, we kind of think of these like larger epics.
Mhm.
And I know one of the other pros that someone listed, I think Lily listed it, is that how different a fantasy book can look like. That this
Mhm.
is not Farah trying to break a curse. This is not
Yeah.
a epic fantasy, but it's still a fantasy book.
Yeah.
And it's almost giving steampunk in a way, even though it's not quite
Mhm.
steampunk, but I get like a little taste of it.
I do too.
And I'm a sucker for steampunk too, so I just was like, it's just a romantic, like plenty of steampunk animes that I love. So it's yeah, so like there's enough for it in here for me that I was on board with it, but I can also understand that if that's not what people are used to or like that's okay.
Mhm.
That's okay if
Yeah.
that's not like if you are here to read a fantasy and you want action, you want more going on, totally understandable.
Yeah, yeah. Um, that being said, we do have a lot of listeners who said that they really did like the characters. They really
Yeah.
did fall in love with these characters. They are easy to like. And I know for me that's why I was enthralled, was
Yeah.
the book. It was these characters.
Yeah, the characters were really great, and I'm going to even say, like, we don't meet a bad character. There's no villain. I mean, maybe his dad is the worst one there,
Mhm.
and we can understand his motivations. It's not a good motivation, but we can understand
Right.
it.
Right, right.
Like, he's trying to preserve his family. He knows the war is coming. He is trying to be strategic. And he's classist, yes, but at the same time, like, that's if that's all that happens in a book, that's like it's pretty tamed.
It is.
And it speaks a lot about the world that's happening that this is
Mhm.
in. And it's also impressive, like, to have written a whole book and there's like no evil or bad character that we've met yet. Like, plenty of gods, like, stuff happening in the background, but even at the very end when we get to see Forrest, he's not evil.
Right. Right. It's and I think that goes back to there aren't high stakes, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no evil individual we encounter that we have to overcome. It's really just about normal people trying to survive.
Yeah.
Even Roman's dad is just trying to make sure his family survives the
Mhm.
war. The scientist is doing the same for his family by marrying his daughter off
Yeah.
to Roman. Every individual that's working, they're just working to survive.
It goes back to this going back to the imagery of the garden. Like, the
Mhm.
garden is a metaphor for life. Like, they're just trying to make something pretty and something live in this
Mhm.
wasteland, essentially, and
Mhm.
they're just trying to have it grow. And that's why at the end you see it treaded on, like,
Yeah.
war comes and ruins life, but like that garden really is like a metaphor of, like, you're just trying to, like, I don't know gardening terms, sow the oats, sow the soil, like, make the soil fertile. I don't garden. I killed a lavender plant within
Sow the
days.
seeds.
Sow
Sow
the
the
seeds,
seeds.
that one. They're just trying to survive and sow seeds and everything, and like that is the book.
Mhm.
So, and there aren't any bad seeds in this bunch.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad that you made that garden connection. I'm just sitting here wowed by it.
By it or by me?
By you.
Okay, and it.
And Rebecca Ross for writing it.
I'm impressed with Rebecca Ross. All right, so I'm going to read a note from one of our listeners. It was lacking. The fantasy element was so soft. Oh, enchanted shop and a proxy war for the gods. I kept seeing it described as enemies to lovers, but they weren't ever enemies, just class divided work rivals going after the same promotion. It was well written and gave great imagery. I definitely found myself highlighting it for the writing, but not for the plot, if that makes sense. I think after coming off a really intense romantasy war, stabby, stab, evil king, it felt like eating a slice of deli meat when I really wanted steak. Just did not do it for me. I don't understand the obsession, especially with romance.
I love this comment for a lot of reasons because I remember feeling that way the first time I tried to read A Court of Thorns and Roses. Of I love the imagery too of eating deli meat when you really want a steak. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I totally understand. And I can appreciate that this is something I can appreciate that Divine Rivals is a book you need to read in the right state of mind.
Yes, yeah.
You can't read this after reading a high stakes fantasy. You can't
Mm-mm.
read this after a space opera. Like, there we were fortunate enough to come to this after reading the Very
Very
Secret
secret sign.
Society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
So
right. Cause like I have such warm fuzzy feelings for this book, and that's because of walking away from Very Secret Society.
of irregular witches, right?
Yeah.
So I think if we had come to this book after
Serpent in the Wings of Night.
Serpent in the Wings of Night, what's another one we really liked?
Hurricane Wars.
Yeah, any of the ones that were more heavy fantasy, I
Yeah.
think we would have a different opinion.
Yep.
So, that being said, enemies to lovers. This goes back to something we've said multiple times
It's an
throughout the
angry
summer.
puppy.
It's an angry puppy to lovers romance.
Yep.
It's not enemies to lovers has been beaten down by the marketing and PR arm of
Yep.
the publishing world.
Yep.
I don't think you can trust anyone who uses the trope enemies to lovers until you read it for yourself because it's used incorrectly.
Absolutely.
This is a work rivalry
Yep.
to friends to lovers.
Yeah. Yeah. And even friends to lovers is putting it loosely. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't even call it because they weren't. Roman was in love with her way long ago, and
Oh yeah.
and
And
Iris had feelings for Roman before she knew who he was. Like it was just like it was workplace rivals with chemistry.
yeah, yeah. And let's dive into the romance aspect of that now. I think is the right time.
Yeah.
So you mentioned feeling at one point that maybe the falling in love with Roman versus Kava was kind of quick.
I would like to expand on that.
Sure.
Wait, no, you expand on what you're saying, and then
So I want to first talk about Roman and Iris as work rivals before the Kava exchanging of letters is introduced.
I want to clarify my one thing.
Sure.
Roman and Iris falling in love as quickly as they did made sense. Iris falling for Carver, I just needed a beat longer. Just the small, but I'm willing to forgive it because of how intense their letters were.
Fair. That is fair. So, yeah, back to your point on the Roman front, it's believable because we start out with Iris's quote unquote friend at work, Sarah, being like, "It's so cute. When are you guys gonna date?" Like,
Yeah.
and Iris is like, "I don't know what you're talking about." She obviously was just so closed off to her own feelings. She couldn't recognize that while they were work rivals, there was chemistry.
But she at the same time she did because she asked him for lunch, like to get sandwiches the first time. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
she didn't want to recognize it, but like there
Mhm.
were parts that clearly were recognizing it. Like she knew he
Right.
was handsome. She knew that she
Right.
was like checking him out. Like one of her first questions is if he has a girlfriend. Like you
Mhm.
don't have to
Mhm.
ask that about a work rival.
Right. And then she gets upset and a little bit jealous when his betrothal is announced.
Yeah.
And he's obsessed with reading all of her stuff and he like wants to know everything that she does. There's obviously chemistry at the start.
Yeah.
So it is not a leap for them to finally get over whatever weird rivalry they have
Yeah.
to fall in love. Now, when it comes to Roman's alter ego,
Yes.
and I'm saying Kava because that's how it was pronounced in the audiobook and it was said in a British accent. I don't know what the writing is.
Oh, did I say Carver? Carva?
Yeah.
Kava?
Carver.
My name is Kava.
Let me double check. Oh, it is Carver.
See? That's me being British.
That is you being British. If you look up Roman Kava, it's apparently some sort of prosecco.
That's funny.
Okay, or Kava is a like champagne, I guess. I don't know, whatever. Okay, Carver. His name is Carver. This is what you get for listening to the audiobook.
And not having a British heart.
And not having a British heart. I can kind of see how the letter exchanging with Carver is the key that opens up Iris to the rest of the relationships in her life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because letters with Carver are the turning point for her, she puts a lot of stock into that pseudo relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, oh, this is the first person in a long time who's understood me. And as a result, I've met people who understand me.
Yeah.
but this was the first one,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So to your earlier point, like, there's just a lot of intensity
Yeah.
between the two in this letter exchange, and a dependency
Yep.
that the relationship isn't really a relationship, it's a codependency.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it makes sense as an independent woman why, although Iris is mad when she figures out Roman's true identity and Carver's true identity,
Mhm.
that she's able to overcome that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all of it made sense. It was just more of like I needed a heartbeat more. And I think a big part of that, I either needed a heartbeat more, or, and we'll get into like the young adult genre of it all in a moment. I think that's like deserves its own conversation. The fact that they were 18 and 19
Mhm.
was a big hindrance to me. If they were adults in my mind, as I aged them up in my head, they were
Mhm.
29 and 28. And it's like that is someone I can believe that understands the world enough to know what they want and to be able to like say like okay, yes, like you are someone that I am opening up to and everything. Like, I mean, the amount of people that I've like just had text exchange where it's like, we've been texting every day for a week straight, and you're just like halfway in love with that, you know? So I
Mhm.
get
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, and I think that's, for me, their romance feels very young. It
Mhm.
feels very naive
Mhm.
because these are the first individuals of their age, of the opposite gender, that they're opening up to.
Mhm.
It feels like a first romance. It feels like a high school or early college romance because they're so quick to fall in love with very little context and very little experience. And that's
Yeah.
not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I do feel like it is very on point in that way.
I'm processing cuz I didn't feel like it was a young romance. It didn't feel, but at the same time it does feel like a new romance. So like I get I feel both at the same time. And again, I want to reserve my like YA discussion for like once we're like ready to go into that YA discussion, and maybe this is the good transition point. But I I got the like youthfulness to
Mhm.
it, but it still did not feel like a first. Okay, I think it felt like a first love, but it didn't feel like a young love necessarily, because maybe because of everything else that was going on in the background to me, or because of like how much they were opening up to each other. Like it wasn't a like what's your favorite color? Blue. Mine too. And like going into it, it was like really heavy mature topics that made
Mhm.
them fall in love with each other quickly. And that's and that like it was because of those are the sparking conversations. That's what made me not feel like it's a it's a youthful love but not a young love. It's a first love
Mhm.
but not a child's love either.
Okay. Okay. I mean, in my mind, they were more like 21 and 23
I'm
rather
willing to
than
do 21, 23.
19.
When I said 28, 29, I was like, no, that's like, even I felt like that was wrong.
Yeah, that felt too old to
Yeah,
me.
even that was like, okay, that's not right. But like 20s, like early 20s,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would be able to do that. And but I have a lot of opinions on the YA aspect of it. But before we get into that,
No.
do you
Why?
think we should go into it?
Just do it.
All right, fuck it. Let's go. Let's get crazy with this. Did a little giddy up motion here. So my biggest thing with it, and my biggest fault with this book, is that it is YA, considered YA. And some people wrote, there's no smut and there's no like the romance, and it kind of faded to black because it is YA. And it felt like a book to me that it was an idea, and the author was the author was told, hey, this would probably be sold better as YA. Whether
Mm.
you have a history of YA or this is what she feels comfortable. And I'm going to go on a nice little monologue, TED Talk, so be prepared. I don't think this was YA for a number of reasons. One, YA traditionally is a coming to age story. There is you go from child to adult, and we never got child here. We got, someone who they established pretty early that they were 18 and that they were able to drop out of school, that they were able to drink. There was a lot of things that established them as adults in this world.
Mhm.
I feel like, personally, this is going to feel out of left field. I feel like Hunger Games, I don't want to say ruined YA,
Mhm.
but changed the way that people consider what people consider YA, because
Mhm.
you have never read it before. But Hunger Games, in my opinion, was never YA. It's YA because people didn't know what to do with it, and it was about children, but it was not YA. Like, you have these characters, yes,
And written by a woman.
and written by a woman, exactly, exactly, and you never have Katniss Everdeen, who goes into this coming of age. She was of age. She was living in a world where children were having to kill each other. She grew up with
Mhm.
that. She grew up having to hunt and take care of her family and all this stuff. Like, it was not a coming of age story, not like Harry Potter, not like,
Mhm.
I never read Percy Jackson, but I heard Percy Jackson. I not like
Yeah.
even Twilight. Like, there's no coming of age aspect to Hunger Games. What you do get is a book that makes you think. It's a book
Yeah.
that is really like, oh, this is dystopian AF. This is like, this is all sorts of screwed up. This is making,
Mhm.
like, this is a very mature theme for a YA. Like, that's what it was about. Was like, oh, this is so mature for YA. And I think that's kind of what happened, is that people then were shifting to mature for YA, and then that's what you get with current romantasy and new adult. This, to me, was not YA at all. It was, if anything, it was like being forced to be YA. You
Mhm.
can't have me believe that 18-year-olds are going to be 18 and 19 is going to be shipped off to be a war correspondent, that we're going to trust them with that much responsibility, that we're okay with them dropping out of school to go take care of things, to be treated like an adult, even if what's her name? Not Merida, Miranda,
Marisol.
Marisol, even if Marisol calls them kids, they're not acting like kids, they're not being treated like kids, and they don't have the thought process like kids.
Yeah.
And
So,
that hurts with, like, when they get married at the end. Like, it also makes me, like, not believe that either.
yeah, that I understand that. I Back to my point about Suzanne Collins being a woman who wrote Hunger Games. If
Yeah.
Hunger Games had been written by a man,
Yes.
it would have been classified as fantasy.
Yep.
If
Absolutely.
Divine Rivals had been written by a man, would it have been considered YA? Would it have been marketed as YA?
I don't think a man would have had them be 18, 19.
Well, yeah, that too. I do appreciate your point about Rebecca Ross. Whether she was comfortable with that age because she's written that age before or she was forced to write that age. This does feel like an early 20s. This does feel
Yeah.
more new adult to me.
Mhm.
And as a consequence of it being in the YA category, we don't get to explore certain aspects of what it means to be an adult.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a huge loss. Like, that's
Yeah.
a huge loss. I would even, like, kind of say what you're saying. Yes, and if this was YA, there would be more exploration of what it means to be an adult. That's
Yeah.
the thing. Like, if it was YA, there would be like, wow, again, that's what coming of age is. There's that moment
Right.
of like, oh, so this is what it means to be a grown up. So this is what it is. Like,
Mhm.
what's going on here. They understood life and death. They understood that
Yeah.
life is short. They got it. There was never they never had to learn that lesson. And that's a lesson that adults already know, that there's,
Right.
things have changed and shifted, and and it's not just for smut. Now, don't get me wrong. Dear God, I wish they were older so that we could have gotten that scene. Like, that
Yeah.
would have
Yeah.
been, I want to see Roman do his best. Uh
Yeah.
but it's like, you have it felt very despondent. Am I using that right? Very despondent when you have when you have Iris, who is taking care of her mom, who dropped out of school, which maybe I'm like, high school, college, like, what are you dropping out of school? They never really specified that. who is now a, journalist, a columnist, to then like be getting married at the age of 18. And the getting married at 18 was so rough for me. It was so rough for me not to dismiss it as like kids being stupid.
Well, okay, so let's talk about that because I actually really appreciated it. And let's remember
Yeah.
that this war is very similar to World War One.
Yeah.
Tear gas, trenches, those are all facets of World War One. And think about kid kids, 18 and 19-year-olds having to go to war.
Touche,
There
Amy.
there is, and them being adults, quote unquote adults, knowing that life is short,
Yeah.
you're gonna honor life by doing the rash things like getting married,
Yeah.
right? But just in case we die tomorrow. Like, to
Yeah.
me, that made so much sense. If they had not been on the front lines, if they had not been close to war, they wouldn't have gotten married. It
No,
was a
that's true. I guess it's true. 18-year-olds getting married, even I'm so sorry if any of our listeners was 18 when they got married, but it's just so hard for me not to like feel like you're just trying to play house. It did remind me of a quote from Harry Potter when I can't remember who was getting married, probably Fleur and uh
bill.
Bill, and I think someone said, I want to say it was Mrs. Weasley, but they said like that's what happens in wartime, people get
Mhm.
married.
Mhm.
And that's fair. Like I agree. If there wasn't a war, if it wasn't about like, they could die at any moment, they wouldn't get married. It's the 2021. That's all I asked. Make them 2021. Like that's it. Just the smallest amount. They could still be virgins. That's fine.
But, I understand what you're saying. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I almost think that the ages of 18 and 19 and getting married was to make a point about war. I don't think it was about young love. Or on the flip side, it could be, well, I want these two characters to have sex, so them being that age, I should just force them to get married and then they can have sex.
I would love to know. I want to know more about the decision of it. Like
Yeah.
what is it? I would bet that the marriage aspect is going to come into play
Mhm.
in book 2.
Yeah.
We don't know. I don't you and I haven't read it yet, but I want to say that because I trust Ross and this is the one and only book I've read from her, so who knows. But it feels like I really would hope there's a purposeful reason behind it other than just like, they're married for war. I hope that whenever I do read book 2, it's just like, that's why they had to be married or something like that.
Yeah.
But uh but again, I want to ask her like why 1819? Why not 2021? What
Yeah.
are these what's the reason that it was this and not that, and what
Mhm.
made you, because then at that point, let's say the 1819 is a an aspect of it, and that is a point that they're trying to make, then is it really YA? And did we just decide that it's YA because it's written by a woman and it's the age group and there isn't an intense sex scene? So like, because when you have something like From Blood and Ash, Poppy's 18
Mhm.
and that's a sex
Mhm.
scene. That is a
Yeah.
sex scene. So,
It's more than one sex
oh
scene.
yeah, it is. So it's definitely there's a lot of choices here, and I
Mhm.
guess the second book would have to make or break it to me, where was the fact that they didn't have sex because it's marketed as YA, or because it would take away in a way. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
is that just not her genre? Which is okay. Like, authors don't have to go and write graphic scenes as much as I want them to. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay for them not to do it, and it's okay if that's still not considered YA.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
Now I'm wondering, maybe this wasn't YA. I don't know. I don't know. Okay. So we've gone and we fact checked it a couple things. On Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, and on Goodreads, this is all marketed as young adult.
Mm.
And just to clarify, young adult is meant for the ages between 12 and 18. Or 13 and 18. That's kind of the traditional range, and it is considered coming of age. The question is, now when I say like 12 to 18, it's written for those age groups. Not that that's the age group necessarily, but written for that age. The question then becomes, do you feel like this book was written for a 13-year-old?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. I don't think so at all.
I wouldn't say that this was written for an 18-year-old either.
No. I think it was written for adults, and
Mhm.
it's being classified young adult probably because she's a woman, like you said, and because the characters are young. But I am starting to be on your team of like, there must be a reason why they're this young.
Mhm.
And are they this young because of like, it adds to the narrative. It adds to the
Mhm.
like, the recklessness of the world, not the recklessness, but like
Mhm.
the desperateness of the world. Like, is that the narrative? But like, I cannot read this and tell you, yeah, a 14-year-old would be like, this is for them.
Right. No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. And yeah, so I feel like if this was better marketed as like it's new adult but with young
Mhm.
characters, and there's a lot more meaningful art to it behind it, like the choices are chosen
Mhm.
for reasons. I have to
Mhm.
believe that, knowing nothing about Rebecca
Mhm. Or the second book.
or the second book, but this from my point of view, my limited perspective, I really do feel like there's a lot more choice and artistic perspective behind these things.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I completely agree.
One of the things that I saw in the positive and in the negative comments is the magic system. And because again, this is whimsical and fantasy, and
Mhm.
there's magical typewriters and
And
hints
gods.
and
And gods
gods.
who can enchant or compel
Yeah.
humans.
Yep.
But that's really all the magic there is, right? Am I
Yeah.
wrong?
I don't there wasn't really anything about like, oh, some people can enchant things. Like there was a person who was able to enchant the typewriter.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, and yeah, we don't really get an explanation of that. I think that's one of those things you just have to accept. But I
Yeah.
accept it because there's no other magic,
I
if
mean,
that
there's
makes sense.
magic in the house because he says the house will like feed him and the mansion will feed him and get him water or anything that he wants. So like,
Oh, I forgot. That must
yeah.
have been in the info dump that I forgot.
So I mean, like, there's magical elements, and that's the thing.
And Marisol talks about how the house will not fall
Yeah.
so long as they're in it,
Yeah.
basically. I was like, "Oh, that seems magical." Are
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
magical, Marisol?
Seemed a little magical to me. Yeah, that's the thing. There's magical elements,
Mhm.
but not a magic system.
Yeah, I in the Amazon ratings or like categorizations, it was categorized in young adult magical realism, and I would
Mm.
probably
Magical realism.
I would put it more firmly in the magical realism
Yeah.
category. The only thing that makes it more fantasy is the gods.
Agreed.
Otherwise I would have just said it's magical realism.
And I'm on board with that. It is magical realism with hints of fantasy. Like it's a little bit of
Yeah.
both. And I
Yeah.
I find that to be kind of like a refreshing take because she
Mhm.
kind of chose two aspects and was like, and I shall use both. Like
Yeah.
I like the concept of gods, I like the concept of magical realism, and we're gonna just mish that together. Can you explain a little bit magical realism?
It was always explained to me about making the ordinary extraordinary and the extraordinary ordinary.
Yeah, yeah,
So this idea of enchanted objects is ordinary,
yep.
right? It's rare, but it's still ordinary. There's nothing extraordinary about it.
Yeah. And there's normally not like a lot of explanation behind it. It just
Right.
is type of thing.
Right. It's that is just the world.
Yep.
There's you're not going to get a technical explanation. You're not going to get a historical explanation. It just
You're not
is.
gonna have someone making a spell in front of you. You don't
Mhm.
have someone
Mhm.
who's like, chanting and anything. It just exists. And
Yeah.
because, like you said, ordinary making it extraordinary and extraordinary making it ordinary, because of that, it's like you don't question it. You just kind of like
Yeah.
know that you're in there. And magical realism with fantasy elements, I'm on board with it so
Yeah.
much.
And what I like about that is that it takes away the opportunity for the characters to have magical powers and solve all their problems.
Yep. Yep.
They're still real. They're still like us. They're humans
Yeah.
with limited ability
Yep.
to overcome the the dangers or trials in their world.
Yeah. I enjoyed it thoroughly, that magic. And again, it's whimsical, it's fun.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh let's talk about Roman.
What makes us like Roman? Especially since he's keeping a huge secret from Iris. It would be one thing for them both to not know each other's identity. It is another thing for Roman to know who Iris is from the start.
He crawls to her. Like he just loves her so much. He's
Yeah, but you like him before he crawls to her.
because he's charming. He's just very everything he does is Iris focused.
Mhm.
The second he falls in love with her, before she before he even writes to her as Carver, even before he realizes that he loves her, everything he does revolves around her.
Mhm.
And he builds his life around Iris in a way that I'm all for men doing that. But it's like he starts building it before he even knows what's happening, and then once he realizes it, he never fights his feelings. He
Mhm.
straight up goes to be a war correspondent to be with her. Like there's never a moment of okay, like I'm like, like what do I do? What do I not do? Like he never questioned or doubted his dedication to her. And it's more than just love,
Mhm.
it's truly dedication. He's
Yeah.
dedicated to her writing, he's dedicated to her progressing as a journalist.
Mhm. Mhm. And he's dedicated to her safety. Like
Yeah.
he goes to be a war correspondent with her not to be near her, but to protect her from the war.
Yeah. And not to stop her either.
Right, right. Just like if you're going to the front lines, I'm going with you.
Yeah, and he never once stops her for anything. Like even
Mhm.
the times that he's like begging her like, just hang out with me and she's like, "I must go save people." He's not sitting here being like, "How did
Don't.
you like no, don't." Like he's like he gets it. Like that's her.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just what she's going to do and he never stopped her from being her.
Yeah, he never tried to deny her once she made her choice.
Yeah. And help her. Like he brought her the coat the night that her mom died, the night that all that goes down. He's the one who told their boss about it. Like
Mhm.
he's the one who says, "Hey, we need another chance for
Mhm.
all of it." Like and it's not like because he's giving up his thing, he still wants to he still wants to compete with her. That's the other
Mhm.
thing. He's never like trying to hand it necessarily to her because but he views her as an equal.
Yeah.
And that's the other half of it where it's like it's not like a pity handout. It's like I want to compete with you. I want to be
Yeah.
at your or at each other's level so that we can go head to head.
Yeah, and other than the first time they meet, he treats her like an equal.
Yeah.
He assumes they're not
Yep.
equal, but the second he realizes they are always equals.
Yep. Yep. And he recognizes his faults pretty quickly
Yeah.
and everything. So, I mean, and it's like, kind of a hell of a thing to confess to.
Mhm.
So, I'll forgive our baby Roman Kit boy. Kit. Yeah, Roman Kit baby.
Roman baby kid.
Roman baby Kit. Yeah, he's just a little sweetie pie and he crawled for her. Like that scene was
Destroyed me. Destroyed me.
and what I appreciate though is how hard she fought to get to him though,
Yeah.
because you have a scene where I think it's really easy for it to look one-sided. Like
Mhm.
he crawled for her, but she went back for him
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
like her brother basically had to like choke her out to take her.
Yeah. Ugh. I was so mad at that scene. How dare he? Like, what brother? And don't get me wrong, for someone who has been compelled by God,
Yeah.
who's fought that compulsion,
Yep.
who's been a victim of war, who has PTSD, like, his actions make sense. I don't like them.
I think
Yeah.
every single one of your brothers would choke you out to save you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like I have
Michael?
he would choke you out just to choke you out. Just he was like, "You might get stung by a bee, die." Like it's
Pass out.
yeah, like it's definitely it made sense. I know people may not have liked the forest part. Like this
Mhm.
is a guy who has been literally through the trenches,
Mhm.
who is desperate to get out, has found the one good thing in his life, the one thing that he's said that I'm going to go and find. Once he realized that she was alive, he was like, I'm going to her.
Mhm.
Yeah, and he doesn't know Roman. And it's like, again, this is my 18-year-old sister. You found a husband in the 4 months I've been gone?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're
Like,
gone. Like it makes total sense to me that what he would do.
yeah. Yeah, like, you're 18, you don't know enough to make these kinds of choices. You don't know what's best for you. I do.
Yeah, what, like 5 months, 6 months, even let me be generous and say 6 months that
Yeah.
he's been gone. I would if I went away and I came back after a war and I had a younger sister that was like, I got married in 6 months and he's the love of my life. I'd be like, okay, babe, like, well, goodbye. Like, we're fine. How well do you know him? I can't believe this.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
it's rough, but like I'm on board with it. But Roman got at the end with that crawling scene. It was just
Mhm.
so good of how and the fact that he's still crawling even when the god shows up and he's like
Yeah, and the god
still.
was like, he's 1 hour and 13 minutes away from dying.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
hurt
thought it
my
was I
heart.
thought it was a minute and 13 seconds or
Oh, no,
something.
you're right. You're right. It was 1 minute and 13 seconds.
Yeah. And,
Death.
like, he just was and the fact oh my god, and the fact that he was, like, running to her with a broken
Mhm.
leg and trying his
Mhm.
hardest, like, even through everything, and, and I am happy that Roman got to see her choked out to leave, because at least that way he knows that
You're
she loves him.
assuming he had
Mm.
fallen by then.
Well, like, he saw that at one point they look at each other, and once she sees that it's him,
Oh, that's
she
right.
does go fighting to get him and
Yeah,
stuff.
that's true.
And, we're assuming they're screaming and stuff, and they're not far. My how far is 5 meters? Like, I just don't know this stuff.
5
Like,
yards. Assume a meter is a yard. They're approximately the same.
I don't know how many yards is something's away from me right now. That's
You've never seen a yardstick?
no, I have, but like I'm looking in my room. I'm like, what? How the fuck is 5 meters? Like, what's
I
5 yards away from
okay.
me?
A yard
Yeah,
is 3 feet.
yeah, I know that, but I'm looking from
So
here to
15
there,
feet. 15 feet. So in your room,
from where I am at right now.
yeah. From where you are right now to your closet door is approximately 11 feet. So a little bit further
I
than that.
love that you know exactly where. I love that you know from where I am to my closet how many feet I am away from it. I couldn't tell you that. So I know you know this information from that like 1 month from 2.5 years ago.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, so you're saying from me to my closet is how far Roman would be, or is it from me to my
From
living room?
so from it would be more like, so you to your closet is like 3 yards, 4 yards
So
almost.
I would say almost from me to Nicole's room.
No, not that far. I would say from you to where Nicole sits in the living room.
Oh my god, I could fight someone off to get there. I
Yeah,
would.
like they were super
They
close.
were super close. I think she should have bit him.
Yeah.
I would have gone feral if I was that close. I would oh my
Well,
god.
she essentially did.
Yeah, she did. She did. I mean, he choked her out and everything. So
Yeah,
in that regards, like I'm sure he saw her get choked out.
yeah.
I'm just like she got choked for love. I want him to know that.
Instead of squat for love, it's choke
Choke
for
for
love.
love. So let's talk about the one thing that like you flat out said you didn't want to talk about.
The letter at the very end of the book, and And Iris's perspective specifically states she was in such a hurry to leave for the war, she didn't want to read the message and to change her mind.
Because she knew it would.
Because she knew it would. And then she reads it and it says, Iris, it's me, Kit. Killed me. So, but let's talk about, so to me, this is a sliding doors moment. If you've ever watched that Gwyneth Paltrow movie. And it's just a huge what if. What if Iris had read that letter before going out to the war?
Yep.
Would she have stayed?
Yeah.
And if she had stayed, Roman would not be captured by a god right now.
Yep.
Roman's leg would not be destroyed right now.
They wouldn't be in love the way that they are right now either. They wouldn't be married.
Yeah, and would that be better?
Let's play this hypothetical game. Also, side note, as an author, fantastic. Fan-freaking-tastic to have that be the last, like, the letter that he wrote, that she, like, to have that end there, and to have her read that and the devastation of that feeling. Oh my God, such a good job. So I'm just like, that was absolutely chef's kiss, maniacal laughter, evil. I applaud you, Rebecca. Now the what if game. I think she would approach him just to yell at him and then still run off.
Maybe. And then they would not continue to correspond. He would not have been able to figure out where she was.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Or, I think in my happy world, maybe they still end up the way that they do and stuff. But like the thing is, the what if is there, and that what if will haunt her. And that's what matters.
It is what matters. I think what also matters is the fact that Kit was willing to reveal his identity.
Yep.
And then when he realizes she doesn't know who he is, he chickens out.
Yeah.
And then when she receives another letter that might reveal his identity, he keeps trying to distract her from it.
Yep.
So, like, that also has a big what if. Like, why didn't he reveal his identity again? Why did it take so much for him to do so?
At that point, he's probably just trying to, like, get her to love him. Like, right, I need you to be on my side. I need you to be that you're like, if you think about the end of You've Got Mail, she's like crying to him, being like, I was hoping it was you. And I'm like, woman, he did you so dirty. He did you so dirty. But like, but at the same time, like, there is an aspect where in You've Got Mail and Shop Around the Corner, where now the difference is You've Got Mail and Shop Around the Corner, he doesn't know about her until like halfway through. Kit knew immediately about Iris early on, but all of them try to win them over as their real selves. Like,
yeah,
they're like, hey.
Which for Iris, he was winning.
Yeah.
He was winning, and she was having a hard time reconciling the two. And what makes it easy for her to overcome his betrayal is the fact that it makes her reconciliation easier, right?
Yes, yeah.
It makes her reconciliation of Roman and Carver go away.
Yep.
Because they are the same.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It was evil. It was painful. There's part of me that thinks that if she had gotten that message and read it before she went off to war, she would have waited a few more days.
Yeah.
They would have fought, but she's so attracted to him, she would have stayed.
Yep.
They would have figured it out. They
Yeah.
could be making babies right now.
At this very moment, they could be making babies.
We could have some smutty scenes in the safety of their homes.
I mean, like, she had a home he could move right into.
Right.
Her mom's dead. They could just you can just move him right in.
Yeah. So this book really hurt my feelings.
It really did. I haven't seen a book hurt you like this in a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen a book hurt you like this.
I don't remember the last time I've been hurt like this, to be honest. And I saved you from that hurt because I knew it was your time of the month.
I was on my period and I was very emotional and I was not doing too hot.
Yeah, and I needed you to be safe.
Thank you for taking that for me. For taking
You're
that emotional
welcome.
bullet for me.
You're welcome.
I'll listen to Ruthless Vows first, and then that way I'll tell you. Or
Yeah.
Ruthless Vows, and I'll be like, okay, prepare yourself.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm not ready to dive into that.
I think you should do what I did, and I really want you to watch You Before Me this weekend.
Okay. Me before you.
You Before Me.
Me before you.
Is it Me Before You?
Mm-hmm.
Me Before You.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You said
you're
it
right.
right earlier today.
I know. I'm realizing that now. I had to slow think that one. Yeah, I all I want for you is to have like be really busy, do your whole thing on Saturday, which I know you'll be nice and exhausted. I want you and Emma to curl up on the couch, and I want it to break you. But like in the best way possible, because you just feel so good at the end by feeling so miserable.
Okay. We'll see if I can convince Emma to do the same.
I'll text to remind you. Like,
Okay.
go cry.
You might have to text both me and Emma and be like, I assigned Amy to cry. You have to make sure it happens.
I will. Trust me, I will. Amy needs to cry in the healthy way possible, because otherwise it'll just come out in the worst time. And this is a structured, healthy cry. This has been therapist approved by multiple therapists I've had.
That's fair.
Yeah, I've my new one was like, how often do you do this? And I was like, not often, don't worry. She's like, so how regular of a thing does it take place? Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. If you are enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo. You can also follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle BookTalk for Book Talk.
Bye.
Bye.